In the 1950s, Newport Pagnell was a smaller, quieter town, but with more shops and many more public houses, like the Pig and Whistle in Mill Street, the Railway Tavern, currently an Indian restaurant, and the Neptune Inn, once at the top corner of North Square and long since demolished. The top windows of the Anchor Hotel, which was in the High Street, can still be seen if you look upwards as you go by. One assumes that these hostelries were well frequented when pubs were one of the few places to meet and socialise in the evenings. During the day, there are at least 3 cafes to visit. Lawman's was also a bakery. Then there was the Cosy Cafe, and almost opposite Ousbank Street, but in the High Street, was Worsley's Cafe. There was also a sweet shop on one side of the cafe and a shed on the other side, where Mr. Worsley would mend bicycles and where you could leave your bike safely for a small fee if you'd biked into Newport. Friends and relatives would meet for tea and a chat at Worsley's and the other cafes. One such family of 4 sisters would meet up on Saturdays to shop and catch up on news. They would also visit Hayler's grocery shop, now a restaurant at the top of Silver Street, where bacon was cut for you by the slice, and Mr. Hayler's mother, dressed in black, would sit at a high desk in the corner of the shop to receive the money. Another general stores was Walton's grocery shop, along near the parish church, shown here decorated for Queen Elizabeth II's coronation. If shoppers wanted a newspaper, they could call at Mrs. Short's small shop in the High Street, where a large cat would lie on the counter amid the papers and boxes of unwrapped sweets. The big event of the year was Thurston's Fair coming to the town. Years ago it set up in the High Street, and then was moved to Berry Field, where swing boats and dodgem cars were popular features, along with the candy floss. Apart from the pubs and cafes, there were few places where older people could meet up for a chat with friends. Young people had a club run by Skip Murrah and his wife Kath. The Co-op had loaned them a room in the High Street for a youth club, which the young people then helped to decorate. But the only other free entertainment for older men was to sit on a bench in Berry Field to watch when cricket matches were played. So, around 1953, 3 well-known younger men in the town decided they would try and raise money to improve things for the older generation. They were Les Payne, Peter Adams and Ron Groom. Their particular strengths went to make up a good team. Les was the businessman, Pete was the practical one, and Ron was the creative ideas man. Together they made up PAG Productions. The 3 men organised fundraising events such as a soapbox derby and a wee Willy Winky race, which was very popular as competitors had to drink half a pint of beer at all the public houses on the route. Entry fee was 1 shilling, so it was a bargain as the beer was free. This seems to have been on Coronation Day, along with other events and parades. Sometimes the rules of these races were an amusement in themselves. This set of rules tells the competitors what they had to do for the Christmas pudding race. The lady competitors were asked to wear a pinny and a bonnet if possible. When the town fire alarm sounded for 20 seconds at 11 a.m. on the day, they were to dash to Cannon Corner and then race to the Dolphin, selling 4 pieces of their pudding on the way for 3 apiece. Competitors enter at their own risk, and claims for broken dishes, laddered nylons or lost puddings would not be entertained. From these beginnings, money raised was able to provide such things as deck chairs to sit and watch the cricket in more comfort, and soon the idea of having a permanent club was discussed. Colonel Leslie Payne of the Territorial Army was by now a member of the Urban District Council of Newport Pagnell, and he put forward the idea of a club for the elderly. Fellow councillors offered a room at Brooklands, the original name of what is currently the British Legion building. It had in the past been a private house. Willing volunteers helped to decorate the room, and furnishing and equipment was provided by donations and club funds. This club room soon proved too small for the once weekly meetings. The room could comfortably hold 40 people, but we are told that as many as 90 people squeezed in. It was not long before the club had 200 members and had to be split up to use the club on alternate weeks. To overcome this problem, a larger hall, the Phoenix Hall, was hired. It was just off the High Street where the medical centre now is. Here the members and guests are enjoying the entertainment at a Christmas party, while the helpers take a breather to pose for a photograph too. In 1957, an Old People's Welfare Committee was formed, with Colonel Payne being the chairman. They were offered a site to lease by the Urban District Council for a nominal rent of £1 a year, and on that the club could be built, costing £3,150. But where would the money come from? The National Old People's Welfare Committee would provide £750 towards the project, providing certain conditions were met. Added to this, the Newport Welfare Committee raised £400 from things like buy a brick for £1. Quite a leap of faith, with the prospect of a lot more fundraising. Soon the walls of the new club were going up. On October the 31st, 1959, the completed club was opened by the chairman of the Bucks Old People's Welfare Committee, and local dignitaries stand proudly outside the club. There was now a choir formed from members of the club, and they entertained at the opening with pianist Mrs. Doris Harris. It must have been an exciting day for all those who'd worked so hard to provide a purpose-built club for the older residents of Newport. PAG Productions continued to fundraise along with the efforts of club members until £2,050 was raised in all. Then along came a gift of £1,000 from the King George VI Memorial Fund, and a mammoth draw was to make up the final balance for the building. There was also much enthusiasm for entering a float in the local carnival parade. The first float had a notice saying that only £150 more is needed to fully pay for the club. In other years there was Brooklands Carnival Queen and her attendants, the Flower Pot Men, and the Old Woman Who Lived in a Shoe. The club was now open from 2 to 5 on weekdays, and members could drop in for a chat, a game, to read the newspapers, or to listen to the radiogram. Thursday was a club day with an organised programme, and currently this continues, but on a Tuesday. Members kept their own collecting boxes, such as sick fund to provide flowers for invalids and a building fund towards expenses. The club flourished, and once again membership was threatening to outgrow the building when, like an answer to prayer, Arthur Mitchell, a local baker, left the Welfare Committee a legacy of £22,363, which enabled an extension to be built. What was left after building was deposited with the Charities Commission for Investment, so that the interest could be used to run the club. Arthur's grave, rather appropriately, lies quite close to Brooklands through the nearby cemetery gates, the stone saying, "Always remembered." As the day of the extension's completion came close, the invitations went out for the opening and preparations for the big day went ahead. The extended club was officially opened by the Lord Lieutenant of Bucks, Major John Young, who called the club one of Newport's greatest amenities, which owed a lot to a number of men dressed in nightcaps and gowns charging round the town with lighted candles. Kath Murrah had made flower arrangements for the opening and was also a keen baker, who is seen at a later date presenting a cake to one of Brooklands' first centenarians, Elizabeth Stuttridge. Iris Leary, a committee member, ran a tombola to raise money at the opening, but she was just as at home helping in the kitchen, seen here on potato peeling duty. Brooklands Choir were on hand to entertain the guests. Arthur Leary and Sam Morley, two committee members, made new units for the kitchen, The extension's bigger kitchen gave scope for serving more meals, and a Christmas lunch took place each year, with the older townspeople being invited to apply for tickets for this event. Trestle tables, still in use currently, were set up to accommodate about 200 people for Christmas lunch. At some of these events, 41 club members with dicky bow ties would act as waiters for the occasion. In later years, trustee Jim Wiles decided to open Brooklands for Christmas Day lunch for anyone wanting company on the day. Plenty of offers of help were given too. For many years, the Milton Keynes Sugarcraft Guild have provided small Christmas cakes for older people in Newport. The tradition continues today, and the beautifully decorated cakes are much appreciated. Christmas time was not the only time for special events. Flags came out for the Queen's Jubilee. And Easter bonnet parades were popular too. Transport was, as it is now, a major consideration. The first vehicle bought by the club had a wheelchair lift at the side. Volunteer drivers, Reg Beale and Peter Bettersall, he with the wonderful handlebar moustache, brought those who had walking difficulties to and from Brooklands. In the 1980s, a larger bus was required, and once again, fundraising started. Donations came from many sources. A £5,000 legacy from Billy Rand, the local ironmonger, being a larger one. Here we see Arthur Leary and his grandson driving the bus round the town to say thank you. Also in the 1980s, it was decided to approach social services with the idea of daycare for Newport's frail elderly. A special meeting was called and about 50 people came to find out more. Quite a few volunteered to help with the project, and social services agreed to help with the costs so that a part-time paid organiser could be employed. Of course, yet more fundraising got going for this new project. Here we see volunteers preparing a fundraising supper, we think at the home of Madge Hine, who opened her lovely home in Sherrington for events like this. The Day Centre opened in March 1981 and has been going strong ever since. The first Day Centre organiser was Mrs. Gwen Balding. She was a popular choice and is shown here at her leaving party after getting the Day Centre off to a good start. Another of the early organisers was Nagu Irani, who continued the tone of a warm and welcoming atmosphere for those needing a hot meal, a change of scene and company for the day. Her twin daughters would come and help as youngsters, and later became joint secretaries for the Brooklands trustees. Mondays and Wednesdays were Day Centre days. Volunteer bus drivers and car drivers are here bringing members for the day. Later still, when a third vehicle was purchased with a lottery grant, a party was held to celebrate, and Joyce, as the bus was named, was called after an inspirational volunteer who organised trips out in the vehicle to the theatre and other venues. When passengers arrived at Brooklands, coffee, tea and biscuits greeted them, and a freshly cooked hot meal was provided at lunchtime. In the afternoon, there's a cup of tea, often accompanied by cake, as there's usually someone's birthday to celebrate. On these occasions, there may also be a glass of sherry to be had before lunch. You hold the glass, I'll take the bottle. Here we have two long-serving volunteers. Knitting was a popular pastime at the Day Centre, and there was some lampshade and basket making as well. Before long, members of the Day Centre were being offered an annual holiday, usually to the seaside, when they were taken from door to door and looked after by the organiser and her volunteers. Many people would not have had a holiday but for this service, and the help of many volunteers who've gone along to help look after them has been invaluable. Day trips during the year were also offered, and here's a picnic in the Cotswold being enjoyed. Volunteers have over the years played a vital part in the day-to-day running of Brooklands, and it says something for Newport that over the years there's been a steady stream of willing helpers, cooks, Kitchen helpers, coffee servers, people to chat to members, very important, and drivers, all helping to keep things running smoothly. Well, most of the time. This news cutting from September 1985 shows volunteers in the kitchen with organiser Susan Olney on the right. The cameraman, Derek Snow, got ticked off for keeping them waiting in their carefully posed group, and he explained the steamy kitchen wasn't conducive to his sensitive camera. The same report says members attending pay a fee of £1.40, which covers morning coffee, a substantial lunch and afternoon tea. Of course, volunteers give a lot, but also seem to get a lot from their time at Brooklands, getting satisfaction from doing the job, making new friends and becoming part of a team. Here we see a group of volunteers getting their hygiene certificates from the then organiser, Catherine Hall. Catherine also nominated 3 very long-serving volunteers for the Pride of Britain Awards. Joan Rose, Connie Keeves and Rose Martin won in their category and were named the Golden Girls. In the late 1990s, Brooklands began to show its age. The heating was not reliable and there was subsidence at the cemetery end of the building. The trustees wanted to provide more facilities for older people who were often living longer and more energetic lives. Should the old building be refurbished or should it be knocked down? An open day was held with suggested plans to study and questionnaires to fill in, asking people what they wanted from a new centre. Here we have a former vice chair of Brooklands trustees, Sylvia Tame, entertaining the town mayor at the open day, and one of the leading men who got the Brooklands ball rolling right from its start, President Ron Groom, who is taking part as usual and is on hand to talk to visitors about this special place for Newport's older generation.
A new building with more space could also be used to serve the wider community where possible. And now another lot of volunteers and townspeople began to dream and plan and fundraise for the future, so that in 2010 a new 2-storey building stands proud where the last one used to be, the Brooklands Centre. But that should be another story. However, here's just a taster of how well the new building is flourishing and continuing to provide the warm and friendly service our older generation have received in Newport over so many years.
A sentimental journey to renew old memories. Got my bag, I got my reservation. Spent each dime I could afford. Like a child in wild anticipation. Long to hear that all aboard. 7, that's the time we leave at 7. I'll be waiting up for heaven, counting every mile of railroad track that takes me back. Never thought my heart could be so yearning. Why did I decide to roam? Gotta take this sentimental journey, sentimental journey home.